G'day and welcome to the Off-Chain Podcast. Don here with you. I have a very exciting guest today. He's Bruce Pon, founder and board member of Ocean Protocol, a decentralized data marketplace. Bruce has been at the forefront of the blockchain industry since 2013. He founded BigchainDB, a blockchain database for data-driven use case, and Ascribe.io, a service for creators to claim, attribution, and transfer rights on the blockchain. Ocean Protocol is helping to build and fuel Web3 projects as part of their investment fund in partnership with Faculty Group. And Bruce is also a member of the World Economic Forum, and we're excited to have him on the show today. We're going to be talking about big data. We're going to be talking about all things about data, really. Privacy especially, AI, and even ethical AI. What does that look like? How does that work? How can we maintain privacy when AI is scraping everything for everything and going everywhere? It's going to be a great chat. Let's dive into our conversation with Bruce Pon. Alrighty, Bruce, how did you get started in Web3? What's your origin story there?
I got into Web3. I started learning about Web3 in 2012. I had been building banks, and when I'd heard about Bitcoin, I think it was probably an MIT technology review, it seemed pretty interesting, but because I was so focused on the bank building, I didn't put as much attention to it as I thought I should have. And then 2012, 2013, I met up with somebody I went to school with in college, Trent McConaughey, and he started talking about Bitcoin. And the more I thought about it, I realized that it could be used for some more general use cases other than just currency use case. And that dovetailed with something I'd always been thinking about, which was how do you give people a fighting chance in a world where we have AI, robotics, and automation coming at us at an exponential speed. And I guess with the release of GPTs, Stable Diffusion, and all these large language models, it looks like we're kind of at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does that even mean, building banks? What does that look like to build a bank?
I spent over a decade of my life, probably around from 2004 to 2014, helping to build banks around the world. People would come to me and say, I'm trying to enter into Russia or China or somewhere in Southeast Asia, and I don't know the law of the land. I don't know the regulatory environment, and I need somebody to take me through in a guided process to set up a bank within 9 months. And it turned out that we were one of the few experts in the world who could do this. We developed this niche expertise. And so my partner and I, we set up a company, built it up to about 40 people, and we helped to roll out about 12 to 13 banks by the time I left. And then when I left the company, they were still building banks even to this day.
Wow, all right. So like going into new markets and working out the compliance issues and connecting with money and connecting with government, like that kind of stuff actually.
Soup to nuts. So it starts with what kind of bank do you want to have? Retail bank, commercial bank, wholesale bank, all the different types of services you want, insurance, etc. We figure out that, and then we start with finding a CEO for them. If they have somebody in-house, somebody locally in the country that they want to promote, and then we go through. We had different work streams, 6 or 7 work streams: compliance, tax, audit, IT, commercials, sales and marketing, operations, all that kind of stuff. And we would go through we would align all those streams to make sure that they ended at the same moment, 9 months or 18 months down the road. And we were the team that just made sure it happened. And so that all the parts of the bank gelled. So that when they went live, they could start doing business from day one.
Yeah, right. So that's a pretty unique background to be getting into Web3 and blockchain and things like this. You mentioned, seeing things like AI and machine learning, coming really fast, and you saw some opportunity there, not just for yourself, but also for people more generally. What kinds of opportunities did you see, and how did that lead you to where you are now with Ocean?
So setting up banks, I didn't really ask core questions about what is a bank. I knew how you could set up a bank to meet compliance requirements, IT requirements, reporting requirements, but I never asked as many questions about what is credit, what is deposits, what's loans, what is money. And when I met up with Trent in 2012 and joined this mastermind group in Berlin, we started asking those questions. And it came down to a point where I gave some MBA lectures on what is banking and what is money. And that's where I started realizing that we actually don't know what banking is. Very few people know what money is. And it shocked me that a fundamental aspect of our society is credit as well as currency is so poorly understood, even by somebody like myself who had spent at that time 10 years building banks. And so that was a thread that I thought would be really useful to pull at. And at the same time, it was also clear, starting in the early 2000s all the way up until 2015 or so, that there was accelerating technological change with mobile apps had just kind of gotten through their S-curve and come to adoption. We were starting to see different AI that was able to read people's brain scans and then generate an image that was close to what that person was actually imagining.
Wow.
And at that time, they had already rolled out things like energy systems and our transmission grids that's run by AI. The load balancing on everybody's energy grid in most places in the world is run by AI nowadays. And so it was clear to me that AI was going to take a lot more of the work of humans, calculating work, manual work, traditional work, away, and that there was the one thing that separates us from machines is creativity, the ability to have kind of quantum leaps in imagination, connect the dots in our own human way, work with the machines and figure out something. And that's actually how I got into Web3, because I thought to myself that if we can put a value on data, if we can put a value on intellectual property on top of a blockchain using this type of Bitcoin ledger and database layer, then every human has a chance to participate in a machine economy. I tweeted yesterday, actually, that most people are scared that AI will become more like humans as it gets better. I actually put the counterintuitive proposal that we become more like the machines as AI gets better. And that's something I would stand by.
What do you mean by that? What does that look like exactly for us to become more like the machines?
Let's look at how we interact with our mobile phone now. Get on any subway, any bus, any airplane, and you see people glued to their machines, being not antisocial, but that device that they hold in their hand or on their lap is already an extension of themselves. And so you're already seeing that people across all walks of life interact in a manner that's not the way that they would have interacted 15 years ago before mobile. You have a lot less people looking at each other. You have this increase in people who are introverts participating in the online world and having more agency. You have people who are generally extroverts who are finding it harder and harder, and they're finding that they're lonelier because that connectivity to humans is lessened because it's intermediated by machines. Yep. And that's what I mean, is that when you have AI and it becomes even more pronounced, then we go towards the machines. Humans are very influenced by the environment around us. We're learning creatures. And when the machine is so strong, we actually turn more towards the machines.
All right, man, that's actually, that's super interesting. We are obviously we're integrating machines more into our own lives, right? Like you're saying, it's intermediating even human-to-human contact in many regards, and in a certain sense, that has helped us because we can now connect with people across the globe immediately. In another sense, perhaps it is disconnecting us from people because the human-to-human kind of in-person contact is lessened or now intermediated by machines, or at least by screens. Like I said, AI is already such a big factor of our lives at the moment. How are you viewing, being someone who has seen maybe this moment coming for a long time now, how are you viewing it? So, for example, investors are viewing this moment as like the gold rush, like crypto was maybe back in 2017. The regular person on the street is somewhere on the spectrum between super excited about what this kind of LLMs and AI, let alone AGI in the future perhaps, is going to mean for their lives, in an excited kind of way, all the way down to being terrified of the machines taking over and getting into a Skynet type situation. Where are you sitting at the moment in terms of how you view how we're currently utilizing AI, and perhaps where should we be on that spectrum between very excited and fearful?
I think that the majority of the people out there have no idea how powerful the AI is going to be. If we've ascribed that mobile phones and social media, including the dating apps, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, etc., has had such an influence on the mental state of younger people, women, men, then AI is going to 10x that in terms of the influence. And it's not just obviously in the social interactions, it's also in the work interactions, where you could have a kid who has English as their third language writing perfect essays in English, even though they can barely speak it in a conversational format. So that is something that is going to release a lot of potential into the world and allow for a lot more agency of people who can learn to harness these skills. But it also means that people who don't adopt this technology, like for instance, there were, I think, all the way even up until like Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Angela Merkel, they were proud that they didn't ever use their computer.
Right.
And I think that is a bad omen when you compare it to somebody like the prime minister or president of Estonia or somewhere where they are young and they understand this technology and they can turn their cultures and societies to embrace it and really educate the population. This is a tool, but you can't take away the human aspect of interacting, the social network of our societies and such like that. So I really do think that AI is an adjunct to our society and that it can 10x productivity, etc. But the core value of us as humans is the interaction. And if we lose that social skill, it's going to be really difficult for a lot of people to find their place. And so, as with anything, there's a lot of things to be fearful of if we don't get a grasp of it. But there's a lot of things that we can be hopeful for in order of giving people powers that they could only dream of even 10 years ago.
You're right. So democratizing intelligence to an extent, like you said, the kid whose third language is English, but being able to write something in English or perfect English. But so you're thinking it's not going to be something that's going to take over humanity or humans, but in a sense, it's going to be integrated into how we do life as humans. But where the goal is still that interconnectedness and social connection, but there's going to be a lot of opportunities. Is this what am I hearing you correctly?
Let me put it this way. We talked a little bit about the mobile phone and how that's already affected human interaction, social interactions. Think of the last time that you went hiking out in the mountains where you didn't have mobile coverage, and there was this quiet, there was this connection that you could actually form and establish with people. Those are rarer and rarer, but at the same time, they're worth more and more. I think everybody agrees on that. During the pandemic, I went and drove. I tried to go up to the Arctic Ocean alone in a truck, and I prepared myself so if anything happened, I would be fine. But that serenity of being alone in nature, 500 kilometers from the nearest human, was just amazing. And no technology could help me at that stage other than my combustion engine truck that I was driving to get me back to civilization. And I think that the risk for us humans is that we get too much of our society, especially the young people, get kind of extended into the technology that they forget where their food comes from, what it's like for just living in a natural world without the technology and stuff like that. So this is more general. This doesn't have anything to do with blockchain, but it also has to do with the fact that blockchain and AI are are fundamental parts to allowing this to happen in a seamless manner. And that's actually what I've been working on. So we can bring it back towards not the general stuff with the AI and what the implications are, but there's aspects of the blockchain and AI that weave itself into this overall philosophy that I have, that we need to give people more chances for agency, in the world. And I think that this AI is a part of that.
Yeah. I mean, that agency that you're talking about before, that is one of the things I'm actually most, not just excited about, that's why I'm working in Web3. That is a thing that actually makes me interested in it, the foundational technological basis of it, just to be able to, the way that it's democratizing access to so many things. What you're talking about is democratizing access to data, really, and the ability to utilize data in the ways that before was severely gatekept, or the barrier to entry was way too high because of the cost of computing or the cost of people or those kinds of things. And what kinds of ways are you seeing that democratization or access or agency happening now?
I'll start with the punchline and then work backwards.
Sure.
With the release of GPT in December, and now as of the last few weeks, where we see all these deep fakes of Donald Trump in whatever camel gear or whatever, or Elon Musk walking around with AOC and all this sort of stuff, we're now at the stage where unless the data has been attested to and ascribed to a blockchain, you're not going to be able to trust it.
Right.
What that means is everything, all the data pre-blockchain will be unreliable and needs to be questioned in the future. 10 years from now, when somebody is trying to rewrite the past and they create a deep fake based on AI of John Kennedy saying something that he didn't say, people may not know what is truth and what is fiction. And the only way to make that truth happen is to have authenticity and provenance built into the source of the data on a blockchain. And then that means that all data eventually needs to go onto blockchains in order to be trusted. Once that happens, you will have the AI algorithms running through all these various blockchains, developing insights, and being able to give us verified truths, patterns, predictive analytics, and different ways to see our world and create value using the AI that's based off the data on the blockchain. So that's the punchline. Moving back from that, what the point was is that in order for that economy to happen, you need a digital native currency that's not bound to a nation, something that a machine can access and utilize to garner resources. That's something like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any other cryptocurrency. You need the data on a blockchain. That's on any L1 or base chain. And then you also need the ability for people to license that data for money, for under which terms and conditions, etc. And then you need a protocol that allows that interaction to happen seamlessly with auditability so that you know in every instance how your data has been used, if it's been used according to the terms that you want, and that your wallet gets credited with the money. So that's, I just went through a lot of things like a digital native currency, the fact that all data needs to be on blockchains, the fact that you need to have a handshake protocol in order for this economy to work. The compensation for anybody who is producing that data and making it accessible. Those are kind of like the four components, and all of that revolves around crypto and blockchain. And so that was essentially what we saw, Trent and I, in 2013, 2012, when we conceived of Ocean Protocol, because we knew that in order for a human to have any chance against the machines, we would actually have to make it so that humans could run with the machines, because the machines are going to be controlling resources, allocating capital, etc. And humans can be kind of like a maestro to help guide the AIs, but the AIs themselves also have agency in some way, whatever the way you've optimized it and trained that AI to go in, like conserving energy or composing a piece of music. And we're seeing that with these prompts. Prompt engineering is the latest new job that's been created. Somebody who is a maestro in terms of teasing out the best output from the AI based off that underlying data that it's been already trained on.
Yeah. Okay, man. So we've got a lot of threads to pull on there. Let's go back to maybe provenance built into the data on the blockchain. This is something that is obviously there's some uniqueness to blockchain being able to actually do this in the sense of a distributed ledger. Is this being utilized already? How do we know that a piece of content is deep faked or not? Like, what's the connection between that thing that I see on my mobile phone and the blockchain? How do I prove one is real and one is true? And then how do I do that for me personally? Do I then need to own, I own that piece of IP. How do I then engage with that economy on the blockchain? What does that look like?
The best example is NFTs. In 2013, Trent built out the first NFT platform built on Bitcoin. And at that time, we had a lot of arguments with the Bitcoiners saying that we're not supposed to be using the Bitcoin blockchain for this purpose. It's meant as a currency transaction layer. And us putting NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain was kind of blasphemy and off-label use of the Bitcoin blockchain. But move forward 10 years, and if you have a Bored Ape, you know that it's authentic because it comes off the blockchain. Somebody can go back to that smart contract and say, yes, it was generated from this Genesis address, which is validated and verified. So therefore, we know that it was created using the algorithm behind all Bored Apes. And therefore, if I buy a Bored Ape from somebody, that provenance trail is 100% correct. If somebody tries to pawn off a false or a fake Bored Ape, all they have to do is go back to the Genesis contract and the Genesis creator, and you're able to very quickly confirm that it's not a real Bored Ape. And this is any NFT. It's the first use of kind of authenticity and provenance with something of value. But I think that you're going to be able to do that with any piece of data, your health data, birth, death, marriage, college, all that kind of data, your academic history, what you've said, videos of you, deepfakes, all this sort of stuff. There's going to be ways where you can kind of timestamp every single action where you have generated data to a blockchain, and it can be tied back to you because you will have a unique identifier. There's a protocol, ERC-725, which is called private profiles. One of our friends, one of the original kind of core developers of the Ethereum blockchain, Fabian Vogelsteller, has helped create this one. And that is exactly that, where you can have a profile where you attach multiple attributes to it. And because those attributes are essentially nothing more than just different parts that you control of your data, you can then make that accessible over time. And that could be the library of music that you've created, the library of videos, the writings, the demographic and your biometrics data. All that stuff is going to be able to be attached to a human. And that's why that's one of the cores of Ocean, is that we give power back to individuals in a world where machines are allocating resources, but we as humans have a way to earn money off of our own data to produce value and have agency to do something even greater than what we could have ever imagined. I mean, that's the hope. Whether or not people choose to kind of enter this world and take the most advantage of it, that's a different question. But our goal is to give the tools, but we don't guarantee the outcome.
Right. So can you maybe run us through, I want to pull on some of those other threads first, but run us through, how does this work with Ocean? How are you actually utilizing what you're building or what you've built already to solve some of these problems? What does it look like?
Yeah, so Ocean is, so far, it's this full stack of technologies that help people to kind of starting to publish their data, bringing in an ecosystem of AI builders to start taking a look at data. How does the data economy work? We have a token that is the glue that makes that interaction happen. And right now, what we're trying to do is see what parts of the data economy that we can start building out, engaging with data scientists, engaging with data owners to bring all that stuff together. At the core of it, it's what I said. It's those four components. You have a digital native currency. You have a layer where the data is stored. You have kind of the wallets and identity where people can be compensated for. And then you have this handshake protocol that helps orchestrate this dance of bringing the data, the people, and the AI together and making sure that it's completely transparent, auditable, and according to the wishes of the actual humans that we want to give agency to. That is pretty much Ocean.
Yeah, okay. So you've actually figured out a bunch of this stuff already. It's actually already in play, operating even now.
10 years of doing this. Hopefully we've learned something.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things you've brought up a couple of times now is obviously about data and me as a person being able to own my own data. One of the things that's been perhaps controversial about the recent iteration of LLMs, the large language models, and AI, generative AI at the moment, has been who owns the data. If they're scraping data from a bunch of different places, or data is basically the key, what makes the thing valuable is the data, and then being able to interpret and utilize the data. Artists have come out and said, well, you've basically ripped off, like you've made something kind of new, but it's not just derivative, it's my work, copy pasted and utilized in a way that I'm not okay with. So who owns data in like at the moment, right as we stand today, not just what's coming down the road, but who owns data now? Because you've already said, a part of the benefit of blockchain is going to be being able to timestamp, I made this and here it is. Here's my proof on the blockchain, immutable. Anybody can go and have a look at it right now. But with these LLMs, there's a little bit of obfuscation in terms of who owns that data, where does it come from, who's producing it. If AI is producing a work, who owns the work? Is it me as a prompt engineer? Have I produced this work? Has the LLM produced the work? Has the algorithm produced the work? Has the original creator of wherever that LLM scraped the data from produced the work? Who owns the data?
So in 2013, we thought about this, and we realized that there was a kind of a royalty system that would need to be created. And we thought about developing an AI that would be able to develop weights in terms of relative contribution to the overall value that was output, whether it was data, it was infrastructure, feature vectors in AI, the data engineering, all the different components that we now are faced with today, much faster than we expected, where when there's value created, you could, using digital native microtransactions, send out to 100 different contributors their share of the pot. And because it's digital native, it's kind of zero margin. There's no friction in that other than setting that up initially. And that's why you need to be able to ascribe the original source of that data first, because that's the base layer. That's the base registry database that allows you to build a model, turns out to be on AI also, but an AI model that can start to figure out who contributed the most to this, and if there's value created, how do we get that money back to them? And so that's where you have, as we said, this identity with multiple associated wallets, where if we have this base layer where everything is ascribed, you have this identity, and then you have this handshake that you build multiple types of AI where then you can have attribution and royalties. You have the ability for everybody to get paid. And so to get back to your question of who owns that data, it turns out that OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Apple, they are probably, when the politicians figure this out, probably in about 5 or 7 years, there are probably going to be a lot of hearings, particularly in the European Union, where they're going to force these companies to give a portion of their earnings back to individuals for a period of time, 10 or 15 years, because the original models were based off our data. Moving forward, as I said, all data over time, probably within 5 years, is going to be ascribed on a blockchain. And once that happens, and then the AI models get sophisticated enough for licensing, et cetera, and royalties, you can kind of sunset that legacy of the training of the current AI models, and then implement this where it's actually based on real data on who has contributed what, the AI analysis, the feature vectors, the data engineering, all that kind of stuff. And then people can get paid. That is the world that we've been seeing happening 10 years ago and working towards building so that everybody gets their cut in a very fair manner. And in the future, you don't need somebody like the European Union regulating these agencies because it's already encoded in smart contracts on the blockchain. And anybody who wants to give up their data for money can choose to. Anybody who chooses to keep their data completely private also has that choice. We just want to give the tools to people to have the agency and to make money if they want or not to.
Can you see someone like the European Union giving up their control to a blockchain in terms of something like privacy and data and that kind of stuff?
No, it's not in the nature of a government to try to unwind powers that they've assumed. I've always been a strong believer of government, and Michael Lewis talks about this in his book, The Fifth Risk, that government is the agglomeration, the aggregation of all the societal level risks that private industry cannot manage or doesn't want to manage. There's no economic value. And so I fundamentally believe that there is a value for government, especially in a world with AI. However, I also see that in what's currently happening with the banking crisis being kicked off by a US kind of concerted effort to knock crypto down a peg is part of the struggle that crypto needs to bust through in order to gain wider societal adoption, because this is the right thing to do. We actually are going to see a devolution of powers away from government into the realm of smart contracts, blockchain, and cryptos. And that is going to be as big of a fight as, for instance, the Reformation of taking away powers from the church a few centuries back.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's a big deal. Speaking as someone who is a student of the Reformation, but also in terms of, I mean, how can a government fight what seems to you and I as, inevitable over the next half decade to decade? I mean, I expect there'll be a fight.
It's going to be rough, and we're seeing that, right? In the last while, we're seeing that a whole host, let's say a dozen of the largest players in the industry are now getting slapped with lawsuits and civil complaints and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be a good an easy fight. But I also believe that the energy and the power of youth in this world, they understand the power of crypto. They want it. They know it. People see themselves as global citizens, regardless of religion, gender, socioeconomic class. I think that is an idea whose time has come. And we focus mainly on the data side, less on the cryptocurrency side. But almost everybody in the space, especially from the cohort where I joined in, which is pretty early. I mean, we were the first cohort, I guess.
OGs, yeah.
Yeah, not on the Bitcoin side. There's the side, the cohort before us, the real true Bitcoin OGs. We've all done this because we saw in our own way the writing on the wall that we need kind of a global, decentralized system outside of the control of governments. Just like what Martin Luther thought about religion, that religion is an individual power and choice outside of the control of the Catholic Church. And so you probably didn't expect this on this podcast to be delving into such deep topics, because I kind of hit on some pretty heavy things.
No, absolutely, man, dude. Problem is, I could talk about the Reformation for a very long time, but it's probably a different podcast. Well, I mean, let's talk about then governments not necessarily releasing control of regulation, but almost kind of ceding to blockchain. The problem there is that there are still people coding the blockchain. There's still somebody who's ultimately deciding. And so even though the power becomes a little bit more distributed, decentralized, democratized even perhaps, we're not talking like a truly democratic or distributed process, because there's still going to be intrinsically powerful players and people, and people who are coding the AI algorithms will have a big amount of power. You're going to have big tech, for example, who have a massive head start on this, who are, they are kind of grounded in regulatory zones or areas, but they're still, they can jump and change should they like, to different jurisdictions, or even try to bring about this new regime or era. Who gets to decide ultimately how we roll out AI? Do we default to the big players, the big sovereign players like the United States or the Eurozone, or do we say to big tech, hey guys, you are ahead in the thinking here, you go for it? Do we cede to the World Economic Forum? People, have a varying amount of trust and distrust in all of those different kinds of people. Do we just roll it out and say, hey, go for it, everybody, let's see how we go? Who gets to decide?
I think the best word that was coming through my mind as you were speaking was mass has its own quality. And I think that the citizens of the world, especially anybody under 35, you could even say under 30. I'm already a dinosaur. I'm out of this. But anybody under 30 has kind of power that they, I believe, know how to wield. And the more people that we can educate, the better it will be, because you're absolutely right. The opposing forces will be the big tech companies. They'll be the governments who maybe have a heavy hand, or maybe just to protect, in a misguided attempt to protect their citizens from this new innovation, try to block it, or take that innovation and release a bastardized version of it.
Yeah.
And try to get adoption or mandate adoption. I think that just like, so I think decentralization will win. I think that the developers around the world are generally like cats. They have a very strong streak of independence. They believe in kind of individual action and responsibility and the ability for agency. And most developers I know, they're introverts and they're kind of headstrong. They're more, I'd say, libertarian almost. Yep. There's definitely social tendencies where they can be more left or more right. That's not the thing. It's just that they know that they can control the machines. I mean, that's what coding teaches you. And from 2014, 2015, the closest parallel I had was in 1996. This will date me, when I was building out internet systems. I was building out intranet systems, corporate-owned internet systems within the firewall. And it's very clear that the intranet won. And there was this internet that was slow and pudgy and wasn't really working, and it was just Wild West. And there was this very clean, manicured intranet that every corporation had, our own knowledge base, our own kind of place where all 50,000 people in this company could communicate and share information, but protect it from the outside world. That doesn't exist anymore. It was the internet that won, because it was a faster innovation pace. You had more people on it. You had network effects, Metcalfe's law. You have apps that eroded that intranet very clearly, so that at the stage where all these SaaS tools that these companies need to use to be productive and competitive, they come from outside the organization. And that is what's going to happen with decentralization, except instead of on a company level, it's going to happen on a nation level. And that's cryptocurrency. That's blockchain. And I think young people are going to understand this. Old people, anybody my age, we're pretty much done.
Yeah, and I genuinely remember back in 96, 97, when I thought those BBSs were going to be the future, and the internet, I was like you said, slow, pudgy, who's going to use that thing? And then within a couple of years, bam, ubiquitous, and nobody used BBSs ever again. I don't even know. Haven't heard them mentioned in two decades at least.
They died an obscure death.
Well, okay, so say that is the case. What's the biggest threat then? Because if government regulation is going to slow it down, for me, as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking, well, perhaps the biggest threat is not from without, but it's from within. It's the kind of crypto bros trying to make a quick buck or run a Ponzi or those kinds of things, the kinds of things that are actually making governments and regulators step in and say, hey, this sucks. We can't do this. We need to protect our citizens from this. It's actually detracting from some of those, if not libertarian, at least decentralized, distributed kind of goals, for agency's sake.
I think cryptocurrency is a general purpose technology. And in 2005, there's this economist, I think his name was Richard Lipsey, based out of Vancouver, who talked about it, saying that there's about 30 unique innovations that drive all other innovation. You can boil down to humanity. Our society is built off about 30 core innovations: agriculture, metallurgy, fire, the internet, railroads, now AI, cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is one of them. When you have a general purpose technology, it is like a bulldozer that goes through every aspect of society, and it forces you to look at that aspect of society with a new light. And in doing so, that aspect has to change in order to incorporate that new technology, because that new technology is so fundamentally amazing. And so that is what's going to happen to government. Writing did this to the Catholic Church and religion. Cryptocurrency is going to do this to government and large companies. And the fact that it is so far-reaching and touches almost every aspect — we're talking gaming, NFTs, currencies, banking, intellectual property, a whole bunch of other use cases that we haven't even thought about yet — every single one gets touched. Each one of those is $1 trillion business. When you have that, there are always going to be people who come in and see a way to make a quick buck. And because of the rapidity of the adoption of new technologies, you're seeing it like a domino, one after the other after the other. And in each one, there's going to be a certain set of scams. So I don't think that, like, it feels like there's a scam every day in crypto. And there is. But it's not because it's a higher proportion than in other places on Earth. It's just that with every door that crypto opens and touches, you have so many great use cases and a lot of scams that need to be worked through the system until the system develops an immunity towards it. We develop systems to identify them and stop them from happening. And so I see scams as a way to build our immunity. Might be a little bit too liberal in terms of an open mindset, but that's true. The more scams you see, the more immunity that vertical builds against the bad things that can happen. So you need the scams in order to develop resilient, robust systems built on cryptocurrency. And so if a government comes in and starts to want to protect their citizens against this, it's very noble, but it's the wrong thing, because you will kill that innovation and it will leave your jurisdiction and go somewhere else.
So we need to self-regulate within the industry to, like you say, weed through the weeds before regulators need to come in and protect. In inverted commas.
You need to let that wildfire go through and not have this paternalistic attitude of protecting the people. I know it's painful. Everybody's been caught on scams. I have been caught on scams.
Yeah.
And I'm a crypto OG, but it's for the whole. You really do need this, and it's a pretty radical position for me to kind of say you need to let the scams happen because governments can't react fast enough. I think there was a hearing with the CEO of TikTok where they asked, "Does TikTok access home internet?" Yeah, of course it does. I mean, how does that happen, right? Or there was an office in the US that manages the banks and says you're not supposed to use any open source, decentralized protocol in your banking kind of environment. And they meant you're not supposed to be using cryptocurrency or handling that. Well, it turns out they also just banned email and the internet. Right? These guys don't really know what they're doing. And so the only way to get that immunity up and running fast is to let it run like wildfire and let the community figure out these tools and resources to stop it. And government's not operating fast enough. There's very few people in government. And as I said, I'm a huge fan of government, but there are very few people in government who have the technical and experiential knowledge of crypto in order to regulate it. And when they do regulations, they do it in a way that hinders innovation, takes away power from the population, and reduces the opportunity for people within their jurisdiction. I firmly believe that right now.
I mean, that comes back to something that you were saying in the early part of our conversation today, where before crypto or before Web3, you were doing MBA talks on what even is a bank or what even is money. And it sounds like that is still an issue even now. Like, what is money? How can regulators be making decisions on things when they don't understand even what money is? But also, likewise, how do people who are engaging with cryptocurrencies, how do we maybe educate people on what is money, or will that intrinsically happen as a distributed or decentralized currency or blockchain, become more ubiquitous? How do we teach people about this stuff? How do we make?
I don't think we do.
We don't? Okay.
I don't think we do.
How do we learn?
I think
they get scammed.
I think that there's always going to be a small proportion of society who is going to be utterly curious about these systems, kind of like the engineering mindset. And they're going to go into these systems, ask fundamental questions, and be the people on the fringe who are doing very uncomfortable things that the rest of society will think, man, that's weird, or that's just off. But you need that. You need that in every society. I think I'm one of those guys. And where we need to get to is somebody picks up their mobile device, uses something like ChatGPT, and doesn't need to ask these questions. If we get to that stage, then what we're building towards has been accomplished. Now, there is a strong moral guide to the original OGs in the space, both the Bitcoiners as well as the people who are building these apps and L1s and stuff like that. And I hope that carries through into the future as long as possible. And that is the way that we self-govern. And I hope that that's not diluted. But it would be wrong for us to assume that 8 billion people on Earth need to know what money is. They just need to have that economic agency, the tools, and the ability to get to their best selves using these tools. And it's our job to make that obfuscated and the complexity go away. And that's our challenge. That's my challenge.
But I mean, even as you say that, one of the things that came in the, as the dust started to settle, if it even has settled from the recent Silicon Valley Bank debacle, is people saying things like, what is a bank? So again, asking that same question. People didn't even realize that there was a risk. They thought, I put money in a bank that is a lock, that's guaranteed. They didn't realize that they were actually making an investment, that when they saw, I'm going to get 2% returns, they're actually giving money to someone who's then going to go and allocate that money in a risky endeavor. And I don't mean it's more risky than it should have been. Like every investment has some level of risk. People didn't understand. People still don't understand what is a bank. And so we're saying, well, essentially be your own bank, but people don't even understand what a bank is, let alone understand how money works. So if we're going to open that up to 7 billion people through cryptocurrency or through Web3 or distributed ledgers, are we just doing a disservice to those people? Like, isn't that just kind of kicking the can and down the road to the next person? If we don't know what an institutional bank does, how are we going to be that bank?
I think that there's a couple of core things, right? And make no mistake, there's a learning curve. I mean, we've all been scammed in some way. And so you have to get through that learning curve. It's just like learning how to invest when you're young. The earlier you start investing, the better you're off in the future. But I can guarantee you that nobody makes a good first investment. And so it's the same with crypto. it's the same. You generally will lose all your first investment. Yeah, I remember. Just an aside. I think I was like 22. I started saving when I was like 13 or 14 years old, and I saved until like 22, and then I put my money into like a mutual fund, and it promptly went down like 70%. And I'm like, man, I saved for almost 10 years just to like have enough money to start putting in, and I go ahead and I lose it. I did that like 2 or 3 times more. But the core thing is that I learned how to save. And then that was, over time, I've gotten better at investing in allocations. And it's the same with crypto. Yeah. I mean, I got scammed. Like, this is the third time I'm saying this. I got scammed. And now I have an immunity to be more skeptical for anything. I check the MetaMask before I sign anything, all this kind of stuff. I check the code, all this sort of stuff. And I think that we do need to bring some humans, like, we all need to develop an immunity against the scams that are there. And that's part of the onboarding process. It's frustrating. It's part of the learning. But I think that once people cross that precipice, it's a better world. It's a more resilient world because you don't have the system where go into any bank right now, whether you're in Australia, in Europe, in America, say, I'd like to take out $5,000. They're going to ask you why. And we take it as for granted that, well, that's my money. Give it to me. And that's not actually a given anymore, right? It's the craziest thing that I never would have thought of 20 years ago.
Yeah. All right, Bruce, thinking about the opportunities at the moment. So AI has been around for a little while. Data's been around for a very long time, but people are still learning how to utilize it better, how to utilize it, use it more. For the average person, but then also maybe for the more entrepreneurially minded person, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities right now? And then if you could maybe even forecast over the next 2, 5, 10 years, what are some of the things you're most excited about in terms of opportunities for individuals, for projects, for humanity even?
I think the main thing is UBI from the bottom up. So universal basic income. Universal basic income is a very controversial topic because it's a top-down government kind of, not government, but maybe like a World Economic Forum driven concept. And so from that perspective, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I do believe on UBI from the bottom up, where you live your life. You take your steps every day. You do all the things you need to do for your health and nutrition. You meet with friends. You do social media. All that stuff is going to be part of your data vault. That is something that you can then monetize in the future. And this is going to be available to all 8 billion people if we set the stage properly. And that is UBI from the bottom up, not from the top down. And that is something that I have devoted the last 10 years of my life to, and I'm probably going to devote the rest of it to while I'm working. And so that's the kind of baseline for everybody. For entrepreneurs, here's something I was just thinking about. It is because you have GPT that has scanned the entire open web, free data is worthless now. It used to be that free data you could maybe package and try to sell and all that kind of stuff. It's worthless. ChatGPT has completely made that stuff worthless economically, because with one prompt, you can already say, put this in a table, give me the top 3 insights, put it into a graph, and then load it into a dashboard. Anybody can do that. And so, of course, you can start selling services based off of that, etc. I think that the power is going to be private data, hence everybody's personal data vault, that is inaccessible to GPTs. And that GPT is going to be granted permission to go through 1 million data sets, get these insights. Those insights will then be token gated. So you're going to have token gated private data from people's vaults, and you're going to have token gated insights, feature vectors, and AI. That is the data economy that we're trying to enable. And if you're an entrepreneur, just like YouTube has made it so that you could have millions of channels, each having their own little creative niche and topic niche and earning money from, you're going to have people who are going to be able to access that data vault in an ethical manner with permission under the terms that each individual person has set for their data vault, and then create AI and insights that can then be sold. When that AI is sold, it feeds back to every single data vault, just a micropayment, which may be a cent or two a day per AI algorithm, let's say. But you aggregate that across 1 million different AI researchers who have built algorithms, and then you have 1 million cents a day. That is UBI that I can stand behind, because it puts power into the control of humans, as well as entrepreneurs, to innovate. There is no need for a government on this one, because you as an individual have already chosen your defaults that you feel comfortable with. And I don't deny that somebody's just going to open up the kimono and just open up all their data, and they're going to be maybe more exposed than they should be. Mm-hmm. But I want to give people that choice. And that is the vision that I'm building. Once again, I still think that there are societal level risks that governments definitely need to play a role in. But the more that we can give individual liberty and power back to humans, the better the world's going to be, because humans know what's right for them, and they can act faster and take agency more effectively than any government can. I never thought that I was going to be a libertarian, by the way. This is like, I sound like a fully blown red pill libertarian.
Oh man!
By the way, I grew up believing in kind of like more kind of left politically, but apparently I'm a libertarian.
Okay. Welcome. So what you're saying is essentially there's like a line kind of drawn between pre-open AI and post like blockchain, essentially, that everything that's gone before, that data it's not worthless, but very hard to monetize, to claim, to prove, those kinds of things. And so what we want to be doing is, as soon as possible, actually get into the new economy of blockchain-based or proven data. I mean, I don't want this to sound like an ad necessarily for Ocean, but how do we get started? What does it actually look like for the average person to say, okay, well, I want to not just future-proof, but become part of making this a reality? What are the steps from what was to what will be?
Well, honestly, the first step for most people, just get crypto, like exchange your fiat for crypto. That is our rallying cry. That's step one. All the other steps are pretty complicated. If you have coding skills, design skill, analytic skills, jump into it if you can. But number one, tell your friends, tell your family, you don't have to buy Ocean. Buy Bitcoin. That's good enough. Buy Ethereum, whatever. If you believe in Ocean, go ahead, buy some Ocean. But my point is that the way that we get more people over is get them to set up either an Ethereum or a Bitcoin wallet, get them to buy some of that stuff. That's safe for most people. Mm-hmm. And that's the start of the revolution.
And what about then with my data? So thinking about my data, I want it to be used ethically in the future. How do I not just kind of pour it into the next LLM scrape, but actually put it on the blockchain? What does that look like?
So having a wallet is the first step, because that is a pseudonymous identifier that you control. It's an identifier and a wallet at the same time, right? So that's why we need everybody to have an identity here. And then so with ERC 725, you're going to have private profiles, which allow you to aggregate both wallets and attributes to your personal human identity. That's the next step. It's being rolled out now. It's essentially we're building out the stack. We're still not there yet, right? It's up to us builders to go as fast as we can to build products and services that are intuitive and that people can use. And that's on us. That's our challenge. That's our daily bread. And once the 725 is rolled out more, then you have these personal profiles. So pseudonymous, you have your name that doesn't change, but then you have multiple profiles, you have multiple vaults, and then that's where you start aggregating and storing your identity, your data, et cetera, like that over time, because it's been blockchain secured. And we are now in this transition inflection point where, as I said, because of GPT now, it's very clear that we're going to have a pre-blockchain and a post-blockchain world. That is the precipice that we have to cross, everybody. And we're still a couple years. It'll take a few more years to build that stuff out. But if people are aware, first thing you can do is get a crypto wallet. Second thing you can do is just keep learning and trying to red pill yourself into understanding what the implications are. Because as I said, general purpose technologies go through every single aspect of society. And so if you're an entrepreneur and you want to play a role in this, there's unlimited potential. And hopefully you're in a jurisdiction that lets you do that.
Yeah. All right, Bruce, man, there's so many more things I'd love to tackle with you, and I might have to do that on a subsequent podcast. But if someone wants to find out more about Ocean or to find out more about you or hear from you further, how can they do that?
Oceanprotocol.com is probably the best place to start.
Okay.
Just go there. At Ocean Protocol, Twitter, that's good. We have a Discord, we have Telegrams, all that kind of stuff. But from Twitter, Ocean Protocol, you can find everything.
Start there. Good on you, Bruce. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Off-Chain Podcast. We love bringing you great guests like Bruce, great topics like ethical AI, big data, and what the future holds for both of those, and just for us generally, I think. If you'd like to help us, then please like, subscribe, and even better yet, spread the word, share this episode with a friend, someone you know that is into tech, into the future, into Web3, into AI. Spread the word and join us again next week for another episode of the Off-Chain Podcast. Catch you then.